Hello, can you hear and see me? Thank you for that. My equipment, as you will soon see, a very large part of the creative process is wrestling with your equipment. I just didn't want that to be done for the first 10 minutes of the proceedings today. So, how is everyone doing? Alright. Good, looks like the stream's running. I can see myself on YouTube, so that's good. I'll give people a couple of minutes to pop on in while I adjust the camera and once again wrestle with equipment as aforementioned, because that's half my job. Half any audio person's job. Okay, what am I looking at here? Come on, stay there. You were cooperating earlier, stay where you are. Are we good? Are we still collapsing? My HAL 9000 camera, I'm trying to pin it in place and it's like, I'm afraid I can't do that. Okay. You know what? I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. So, welcome everyone to the first cold read of Behind Blue Eyes by Anna Mosakat, who is here joining us. I've actually narrated for her prior to getting her over to Sound Booth Theater here for her flagship series, that being this very book that we are about to read. I do all kinds of cold reads for Sound Booth Theater. You can find some of the other ones for the Alaskan Fire series. You can find Jeff Hayes does some cold reads as well. I'll be here, I believe, at least 3 times for this, because usually we do about the first 1/3 of the book, roughly. So I believe we're looking at least 3 cold reads, because we got ourselves a 14-hour epic on our hands for this piece. And I will keep Anna updated as to my planned streaming dates and times, so you can all join us for a lovely time. And I would also highly recommend you check out some of Anna's other work. Cyber Squad is a particularly excellent one, and I don't just say that because I narrated it. I had an absolute blast narrating it, is why I say that. Jesse Cobb, what book today? This is Behind Blue Eyes by Anna Mosakat, who joins us today, much as Sarah King has done for the Alaskan Fire series. So we have a lot of very talented writers kind enough to dedicate their time to coming to support the cold read, Sound Booth Theater, all of that. I'm very excited. I'm very excited as to how this is going to go. So, give you a rundown of how this is for those of us just joining us who are new here. For those recurring viewers, hello, and thank you for your recurring viewership. To those new viewers, welcome, and thanks for joining us on this crazy thing we call a cold read. So these actually will get added to the Sound Booth Theater app after today. I send them off to our illustrious team of peerless engineers, and they will put this on the Sound Booth Theater app, these cold reads, for free. So this is essentially, and you can only get them before the book releases, so it's kind of like having a collector's item. This is a warts and all narration. So you're going to see all of my fuck-ups in their amusing glory, and you can save that forever in the Sound Booth Theater app on your phone or wherever you can get the Sound Booth Theater app. And yeah, so you know, if you're thinking, I want to hear Behind Blue Eyes, but I want to hear Zach get mad at his software or his microphone or that one phrase he has trouble saying for some reason, that would be the place to go. And also, I'll do a lot of audience interaction, so usually around every chapter or so is when I check in. The chapters here look to be about 60 minutes in length, so I may check in at scene breaks as well, just because I don't like to leave you guys too neglected. I don't want to just read. I want to talk, and you might get your name shouted out, because I will read the name and the comment that I'm responding to, so that future listeners of the cold reads will know that you were here. your name could be forever cemented in these rare collector's items. So, that all said, I'm excited to get started on this. I believe I finally have everything in good working order. I was just dealing with some software updates, hence my late arrival, so I do apologize for that. But, that being the case, I think we're ready. So let me just check in, see how everyone is doing. Check in, make sure the Stream Deck is cooperating with me. So, for those who don't know, we use Stream Decks while we record. And it makes the whole process a lot of fun, but I have to make sure the buttons are mapping. Whenever it updates, I have to remap my whole Stream Deck. So that's been fun. Hello, Kyra Strickland. Yes. KBFS. I don't know, actually, if the new KBFS is out. Alright. So, as I said, we have Behind Blue Eyes, and this is a cyberpunk epic for you sci-fi fans out there. Kind of a Blade Runner meets John Wick type deal. And it's very good. I've worked with Anna before, as I said on Cyber Squad. I can attest to the quality of her writing. Very excited to be doing this, not only for Anna, but for Sound Booth as well. So I've talked quite a bit now that my camera has finally stopped insisting on succumbing to the cruel whims of gravity. I think we are in shape to begin, so let's do this. Let us do this. So you're aware, for these initial ones, I will be checking character voices. When I first start out, I like to double check the character voice tracks. If you see me stop and listen intently at my computer or duck out of frame, that's what I'm doing. So actually, I'm going to do that right now. I'm sorry, there is some additional ado. I didn't mean for there to be further ado, but there is. There's Nephilim, and I know I have Adriel and Metatron here. So we'll be meeting Nephilim, Adriel, and Metatron in this first chapter. And then I have other Metatron. Our city. Hiding. We've been watching you. Perfect. Okay, cool. I have all of them. And here we go. He said, without arming the narration track. See, that's the kind of screw up you can have forever preserved on your Sound Booth Theater app. Here we go. And here we go. Chapter 1. God's busy. Heavy turbulence shook the aircraft, yet it held course toward its destination. Its powerful engines barely produced any noise, and the black hull made it almost invisible against the darkness. 3 more of the same type of aircraft followed it, traveling in formation, like the silent birds of prey hiding in the shadows of the night. The passengers inside weren't bothered by the shaky ride. Highly focused and ready for anything, they sat there in silence, secured with safety bars into long rows of seats facing each other. All wore the same tight black combat suits and gloves. Firearms were strapped to their thighs, and everyone had a rucksack on their back. Matching helmets covered their heads, cheeks, and upper necks. Only a small part of their faces were visible, and their eyes. All of them held identical neon blue eyes. Their stares were somewhat chilling and disturbing. The unnatural eyes and their unmoving faces made them look like an army of living dolls, waiting to spring into action. "Approaching target area," they heard the pilot say. 90 clicks to go. Drop off in 1 minute, 35 seconds. However, there was nothing to be heard but the wind rattling against the plane, traveling at high velocity across the stormy sky. The voice spoke directly into their heads. All right, let me grab Metatron's voice one more time. We already knew that you were flawless with the routine stuff, right? Your mind is sharp, and Ah, yes. Did we do it? No? Did it not do that? Dang it. Alright, it didn't record. Or did it not switch? Yeah, alright, it didn't record the pilot.
Target area. Bring into action.
The pilot didn't record. Ah, yes. One of the aforementioned fabled warts warts and all. It is... What is going on? What are you doing that you're not recording for me? What are you doing, Ableton? Yay. Equipment struggles. Gotta love them, don't you? Good thing I caught this now. Okay. Excellent. Alright. I think we're in good shape. Let's do this. Whoa, did everything go away? No, 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 no. No. Oh, alright. Screw it. I didn't get that far in. Let's do it again. Unless... Oh, no. Okay, good. I thought it deleted my narration track. Approaching target area, they heard the pilot say. Perfect. Let me check and make sure that actually recorded. Good, okay. No, really? Okay. Why is it only doing it selectively? Okay, that's weird. That's very weird. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Okay. I think I fixed it. Jesus Christ. Technology's trying to kill me already. I haven't even gotten to the dystopian bits yet. There it is. Okay. Fantastic. 90 clicks to go. Drop off in 1 minute, 35 seconds. However, there was nothing to be heard but the wind rattling against the plane, traveling at high velocity across the stormy sky. The voice spoke directly into their heads. Okay, people. Get ready. Another disembodied voice said. To everyone in each of the 3 stealth combat aircraft, this voice was almost as familiar as their own. It belonged to Metatron, the commander. I want to grab him again. He's super important, so I don't want to fuck him up. There are other more things. There are other. Good. Metatron. Our scouting drones report. Our scouting drones report no movement whatsoever and minimal security measures. Everyone is sound asleep. They have no idea what's coming at them. Exactly how we like it. He paused for a moment before continuing, and the condescending tone in his voice indicated that he would enjoy the things to come. Stick to the routine, and this will be a walk in the park. I won't tolerate any casualties today. Nephilim prepared herself, running a final status check on her systems. Her neon blue eyes were the shape of almonds. When she closed them for a moment, her delicate, pale face appeared to be that of a young woman in her early 20s. Anyone who assumed this, however, couldn't be more wrong. A second later, she was content. All systems were operating within specified parameters. She was ready. Opening her eyes again, she caught a look from Adriel sitting opposite to her. A slight grin flashed over his lips. His deep black skin contrasted with his unnaturally blue eyes, and they outright glowed in the half-dark. He, too, was prepared, and agreed with the commander's words. This shouldn't be much more than routine.
"Commencing descent," the pilot announced. "Drop off in 25 seconds." The aircraft lost speed tremendously, almost as if someone hit the brakes. Then, it started dropping. None of the passengers seemed to take notice as 2 Gs hit their bodies, and they were pressed into the safety bars, while outside the enormous rotor tubes of the vehicle turned 90 degrees and transformed the jet into a vertical takeoff and land aircraft, otherwise known as a VTOL. It gave the aircraft the possibility to descend vertically from a great height, like a gigantic elevator. "Drop off in 10 seconds," the pilot's voice continued in everyone's head, while all lights were turned off in the cabin, and the back hatch started to open. Strong, ice-cold wind made its way inside. 5, 4, 3, 2, drop off at target position. The hatch was open now. The safety bars opened, and the men and women dressed in black quickly moved toward it. The VTOL silently hovered in the air, 65 feet above the ground. Without hesitation, the soldiers jumped out from the rear, landing completely unharmed, immediately running off into the darkness and making room for the next to come. Nephilim followed the others and leaped out of the plane without a second thought that a jump like this would most likely kill or at least gravely injure an average person. This was because she and her brothers-in-arms were not human. They were artificially enhanced, state-of-the-art human-machine hybrids. Cyborgs, in simple terms. The impact was no challenge at all for the titanium bones and silicon-based artificial muscles of Nephilim's legs. Her internal sensors showed the impact had caused only 60% active system demands. If necessary, she could jump from 100 feet without risking serious damage. Without stopping for even one beat, she ran off into the darkness, spreading out from her teammates into a pre-assigned formation. They were a squad of 20, moving silently toward the target location less than half a mile away, like a pack of dark predators approaching in the shadows of the night. 2 more squads would be dropped off at other strategic locations and join the attack from flanking positions. That way, none of the targets would be able to escape the assault. Although the night was tenebrous, Nephilim saw the target location they were advancing on as perfectly as if it were bright daylight. Her artificial eyes were much more than integrated night vision gear. Special software connected to her brain made it possible to see everything clearly with a minimum amount of light, similar to how a cat's eyes worked. Additionally, she activated a combat heads-up display, known as a HUD, that appeared directly in her line of sight, which would not only identify targets, but prevent friendly fire. "Hold position," she heard Metatron say, and the squad stopped. As usual, he was sitting in the command center, 600 miles away, controlling the operation. Surrounded by 3D holograms, he could not only oversee the whole situation captured by a drone from above, but also link into the perception of any single unit on the field, see through their eyes, and hear through their ears. "Prepare drones," Metatron commanded. Nephilim grabbed her backpack and put it on the ground beside her feet. She opened it and revealed a black metallic cube. It made a soft click as it came to life. Within seconds, it unfolded itself and turned into a flying drone. Unfolded itself, my mistake. Within seconds, it unfolded itself and turned into a flying drone, slightly resembling a black firefly that was about the size of a small eagle. It hovered next to Nephilim's head, humming softly. Each one of the soldiers had unique drones, directly linked to their neural system. Some drones had flying capabilities. Others resembled ground predators in the form of insects or mammals. To be able to simultaneously mentally control a drone during actual combat was difficult, required years of practice, and brought the term multitasking to a whole new level. However, once mastered, it was an incredibly effective combat tool. Much like punching your iPad if you want to combat having a clean recording. Good job, Zach. Good job. Wait, Metatron's voice. I need to double check that. I will ask about that later. And then, you know what? While I'm doing this... So this particular production is going to get a full sound booth theater treatment. So I'm also going to be marking as I read various other sorts of places for sound effects, music, things like that. So if I happen to stop for a second when I realize that I missed a potentially good spot for that, that is why.
Okay.
Nephilim held still and waited for the commander to order the assault. She wasn't excited or scared that she was about to go into battle. Her artificially augmented heart didn't beat faster. Her lungs, securely sealed through a silicate membrane from any kind of poison or chemical warfare attack, didn't enhance their pace. Her mind was focused and clear. So were her ice-cold, artificially blue eyes, studying the target area. She came here to do her job, her duty, what she had been created for, the righteous thing. Furthermore, it was something she was very good at. Adriel had stated prior to leaving Olympias that they should be back by breakfast. The target area ahead was in shabby condition. Shacks and makeshift houses built in and around the ruins of old, overgrown industrial premises. The location was partly hidden by the remains of an old highway bridge, its old asphalt cracked, with weeds growing everywhere, and some of its circling sidearms had collapsed. The ancient roads and self-made paths were covered with mud. It had been raining a lot, as it almost always did in this area. This was only one of the reasons why any sane person would never understand that people actually chose to live here. The small settlement was surrounded by some archaic plantations and little fields, hidden in between old buildings. Everything here was designed to stay unnoticed, to not be found. And yet, they had been discovered. Eventually, all of them were. Metatron was right. These subjects here were completely oblivious to what was coming their way. Only a few guards were on duty, sitting on two of the old chimneys of the facility. They would have no chance to spot the attacking troops before sharpshooters took them out. After that, they would ambush those that remained in their sleep. Standard procedure, requiring a minimum of time, resources, and casualties. Nephilim's scanner showed 126 human life forms in the settlement. There wouldn't be any left when the sun rose in less than an hour.
We're at a scene break. I need to double check Adriel's voice real quick. Adriel. Where are you? I thought I just had you marked down. Ah, there he is. Okay, Adriel's down here. Good. Alright, cool.
Jeff woke up from a bad dream. He couldn't remember what it was he had dreamt, but it had left him with this uneasy feeling that something wasn't right. A second later, he knew what had woken him. He felt Missy's wet nose on his cheek as she poked him with her muzzle, then ran to the door hectically. Jeff sighed. "Is it that urgent, old girl?" The big, shaggy shepherd dog usually slept through the night, but Jeff understood that she needed to go outside. Missy now whimpered and started scratching at the rusty door of his hut. The old bed creaked when Jeff got up. His neck hurt badly, as it did every morning. The scar, where the augmentation implants had been removed, would never really heal, and he knew that. They had fucked it up during the removal procedure. But he would still rather endure the pain for the rest of his life than have the thing remaining inside him. Missy seemed to grow more nervous with every second that passed. Okay, I'm coming." Jeff quickly put on his boots and slipped into a jacket. What time was it? He had no idea, but it was still pitch dark outside and sure as hell freezing cold. Missy let out a loud bark, as if she wanted to tell him to hurry up. What was going on with her? She never behaved like that. Feeling increasingly uneasy with every second, Jeff grabbed his rifle and alarm device before he opened the door, just in case. When he left the small house that he shared with his dog, he at first couldn't see anything. The night was extremely dark, and a cold wind blew into his scarred face. To Jeff's surprise, it wasn't a persistent bladder that made Missy beg him to follow her outside so urgently. Once out of the door, she stared into the darkness, growling. Jeff's home was on the periphery of the settlement. Beyond it, there were only fields. He had decided to live alone.
Whoops.
He had decided to live alone after his wife passed away. Binding himself to another being so closely had been a wonderful experience he never would have thought possible when he was growing up. The downside was that losing someone that close to the heart could cause more pain than removing all the implants simultaneously. Missy started to growl louder, the hair on her neck standing up. She was staring into the darkness as if she could see something invisible to Jeff's human eyes. He licked his dry lips, becoming extremely nervous. Missy's behavior gave him the creeps. Something was wrong here. Very wrong. A suspicion came to his mind, so horrible he didn't dare to finish the thought. No, it couldn't be. They were so far away, so small, so unimportant, so well hidden. They were safe. Jeff looked up to the high chimney where the sentries stood on guard. He saw them moving. Everything had to be fine. Otherwise, someone would have activated the alarm. Missy bared her canines and moved forward into the darkness. Missy!
That's not hushed enough. That needs to be a more hushed voice on my part. Missy.
Missy! Stay! Jeff commanded in a hushed voice. The dog did not listen. Jeff swore and followed her toward the highway bridge, trying to catch her. Then he suddenly froze in place. For a second, he didn't believe what he was seeing. Tried to convince himself that he was still sleeping, caught in a horrible nightmare. The darkness was not empty. Eyes were looking out there. Monstrous, neon blue eyes. Dozens of them. Jeff turned around and started running faster than he ever had in his life. Missy noticed his panic and followed him, barking loudly. He opened the alarm device and pressed the emergency button. Suddenly, a shrill alarm rose all across the settlement. White lights sprang on everywhere. "They found us!" Jeff yelled into the device frantically, hoping everyone having one could hear him now. "Ambush! Blue Death approaching from the south! God save us all!" Those were his last words. Less than a second later, he felt a brutal force kick him off his feet, and terrible pain. He landed in a puddle of his own blood, coming from a big hole in his chest. The last thing he saw before he died was a horrific mechanical creature, vaguely resembling a cat-sized scorpion, jumping Missy and ripping her head off with its claws. "I'm afraid God's busy," Metatron said with blatant amusement in his voice as he watched how his people downright executed the man and his dog. "Can we help you?" It was unfortunate that they had been spotted by coincidence and hadn't been able to take out the man before he alarmed the camp. But, in the end, it wouldn't make any difference.
I got a little stunted on the delivery there.
But, in the end, it wouldn't make any difference. The outcome would simply be delayed by a few minutes. "Proceed as planned," he instructed his...
Damn it.
He instructed his units on the ground. "Strike!" The command was what Nephilim had been waiting for. Her artificial muscles sprang into action, and she rushed forward. So did the rest of her squad. Coming from all sides, they raided the settlement like a pack of hungry wolves. Within seconds, the first houses were stormed and cleared without much effort. Most inhabitants were still half asleep and didn't give much of a fight when the blue-eyed killers invaded their homes, putting bullets through their heads. Screams of panic and agony could be heard everywhere, so loud that they almost drowned the shrill alarm. People tried to flee, ran helplessly in all directions. But there was no escape from an enemy that could move 10 times faster. Others fell to their knees and begged for mercy, even though it was futile. The angels knew no mercy. But soon it turned out that the inhabitants of the settlement weren't as helpless as the But soon it turned out that the inhabitants of the settlement weren't as helpless as recon had initially indicated. After the first few minutes, which had indeed been like a walk in the park, Nephilim and her comrades encountered heavy resistance. As they approached the inner area of the former industrial facility, the enemy opened fire. Through the eyes of her drone flying above her, Nephilim spotted shooters taking position on the roof of an old brick factory building. 2 more stuck their rifles through rusty, corroded frames of glassless windows. "Hostile shooters, roof, 11 o'clock," she warned Adriel, who walked close behind her. She leaped to cover behind an old truck from the pre-corporate area. "Copy that."
I'm going to have a few questions about this.
All right, cool. "Copy that," she heard Adriel directly through her comlink. He, too, took cover behind a corner, just in time when the shooters opened fire. "Enemies taking position at 3 o'clock as well." High-caliber bullets riddled the metal of the old truck where Nephilim crouched. The enemy was much better prepared than they had anticipated. It was pointless to bring ordinary firearms in a battle against cyborgs. Only high-powered, heavy-caliber weapons could pose a threat to them. The bones of their arms and legs were made of titanium, and the close-fitting black combat suits they wore were fabricated from high-tech synthetic spider silk proteins. In this enriched form, this was an almost impenetrable material. Nephilim turned her drone around and inspected the group of hostiles, who took position on the opposite building. 2 men were about to mount a heavy machine gun. Through their comms, both Nephilim and Adriel heard that other units had encountered severe resistance as well. One particular structure in the center of the facility, which the hostiles were willing to defend at any cost. "How about that? Who could have guessed this would be fun after all?" Adriel asked. "So much for being back by breakfast," she said. Another salvo hit the antiquated vehicle she was crouching behind. Soon, there wouldn't be anything left of it. She had to resolve the situation quickly, and she knew it. "Cover me," she told Adriel. He did as she asked and started firing at the enemies on the roof to the left, forcing them into cover. Nephilim did not hesitate even 1 second. She rolled under the truck to the other side while she commanded her drone to dive toward her at high speed. In the blink of an eye, Nephilim was on her feet, sprinting and jumping in the air. The artificial insect legs of her drone transformed into handles. She grabbed them in midair and let the drone lift her up with neck-breaking speed. Before the 3 men on the roof realized what was happening, she was hovering above them. One of them looked up and screamed in horror as he saw the black-clad woman with the angelic face and disturbing blue eyes drop down on them. 15-inch-long titanium blades emerged directly out of her wrists. She stabbed the screaming man, staring up at her through his eye, into his skull, where she while she slit the throats of the other 2 with her other hand. Then she turned her attention toward the 2 enemies with the heavy machine gun on the opposite roof. The HMG was activated now, and pointing at her. She threw herself to the side, hiding behind the roof wall, the blades disappearing back into her forearms. Then she lifted her guns over the ledge and connected her vision to the software inside. That way she could see directly through her pistols, using them as a second set of eyes. 2 shots, and the men operating the HMG sank to the floor next to their splattered brains. "You're such a poser," she heard Adriel comment. Meanwhile, his own drone, a mechanical hybrid of a spider and a cat, scaled the wall and jumped into the face of one of the hostiles lurking at the windows. The man let out a scream of agony, then gargled as the creature cut through his face and neck. Terrified, his companion tried to help him, leaving his cover. That cost him his life, as well as a precise bullet from Adriel's gun, shattering his skull. "Clear," Nephilim said. "Let's move on. I want to see what's in the building they're defending so fiercely. And I want us to be there first." "Copy that," Adriel confirmed. "Will you still hang out with me once you're an Archangel?" Nephilim ignored his mocking and moved over the roof toward the building in the center of the settlement. Adriel followed on the ground. His sensors noticed movement on his right. Turning his head, he saw a woman with greasy gray hair taking position in a window above him, an outdated machine gun in her hands. He did not bother to stop, but shot the woman in the forehead on the run. Why did these people try to resist the inevitable? It was pathetic. Adriel ran faster to catch up with Nephilim. He saw her jump the distance between two buildings, and then engage two more hostiles who got in her way. They were dead within seconds. She then jumped from the roof on the mud-covered road 150 feet in front of him, cracking the old concrete by the force of her impact. Adriel spotted another hostile, who had been hiding on the street behind an old dumpster. He had something in his hand, ready to throw it at Nephilim. When Adriel's artificial eyes zoomed in on the object, his HUD highlighted it red instantly. This indicated a potential danger. The man swung his arm. "Watch out, Neph!" Adriel said. 4 o'clock, EMP, incoming! He took aim and shot, but when his bullet hit the target, it was already too late. The man had thrown the EMP grenade toward Nephilim. She reacted lightning fast. Without losing even 1 second, Nephilim threw herself down on her knees, stretched her arms, and clapped them together in front of her chest and face in a powerful, precise motion. It activated a shimmering energy shield, which emerged from her limbs and wrapped around her like a ball. The EMP grenade exploded right above her head with a blast of bluish lightning. The lightning bounced off the energy shield and disappeared in the ground. All of this lasted less than 3 seconds. The shimmering shield around Nephilim vanished, and she jumped up again. "Thanks," she said, running off as if nothing unusual had occurred and someone hadn't just tried to deep-fry her brain. Adriel shook his head, made sure there was no one else who might attack them from behind, then followed her. A strong electromagnetic pulse blast, short EMP, was the most effective weapon against cyborgs. A direct hit by an EMP grenade not only instantly put a cyborg on ice for several minutes by completely shutting down their systems, it could also cause tremendous damage to their hardware or programming. This was especially dangerous concerning the tech implanted in a state-of-the-art cyborg's brain. It had happened before, that strong blasts had outright fried cyborg brains and caused irreparable damage, leaving them behind as drooling vegetables, useless to anyone. Every new year, more powerful EMP weapons were developed, but luckily for Nephilim and her brothers in arms, Olympias' own engineers weren't sitting on their hands either. The shield Nephilim had projected was nothing more than a portable energy version of a Faraday cage. Equipped with this countermeasure, she and her people were almost unstoppable. The structure in the center was a mostly windowless former production building, with a high chimney attached to it, of which the upper segment had collapsed over the years. Several smaller huts and self-made buildings had been constructed in front of it. Obviously, this was used as some kind of rudimentary town square with a primitive market. A fierce firefight was raging around it and the building. The settlers were throwing everything they had at the attackers in a last, desperate stand. They were nonetheless eliminated one by the blue-eyed troops in black, who advanced with the efficiency of machines. "Pathetic," Adriel said as he and Nephilim arrived. Then he added, "And we're too late. There won't be anything left for us but twitching pulp." "Not necessarily. Look at the infrared scan. There are 27 human life forms in a room at the eastern corner of the upper level. I bet those are the ones they're trying to protect." Adriel agreed. "Could be high-value assets of some sort." Nephilim was already on the run. "Let's take a look." She turned away from the fight and ran to the other side of the building instead. "Hold position," she told Adriel. "I'll let my drone pick you up here." "Copy that. I'll cover you." Her drone came flying down, and once again Nephilim grabbed it to use as a lift. This time, shooters appeared in the windows of a squat house opposite the center, and immediately took aim at her. She took evasive action and felt the projectiles flying by only inches away. "Sons of bitches!" Adriel said. "I got this." He stormed inside the smaller building, guns in his hands, his drone at his feet. Nephilim let go of her drone and landed on the roof, rolling to cover. "Roof is clear," she said, scanning her surroundings. "There's a hatch leading inside." "I'm a bit busy here," she heard Adriel over the comm. "Multiple hostiles."
Actually, you know what? That sounds too like he's in trouble. He is not in trouble. He is very much in control of that situation.
I'm a bit busy here, she heard Adriel over the comm. Multiple hostiles. Need backup? Nah. They're as good as dead. Go ahead. Copy that. As Nephilim moved to the hatch, the whole building was shaken by an explosion. Someone was throwing grenades. Careful now, people. Metatron spoke into everyone's head again. Don't get carried away. I don't want to see casualties in the Careful now. Careful now, people. I don't want to see casualties in the last... Yeah. Careful now, people. Metatron spoke into everyone's head again. Don't get carried away. I don't want to see casualties in the last few minutes. Swallowing words. I don't want to see casualties in the last few minutes of a flawless operation. Nephilim arrived at the hatch and yanked it. It hadn't been open for many decades and was rusted shut. But this wouldn't stop her. She focused her energy reserves into the artificial muscles of her arms and pulled. The hatch then creaked open, as if it was butter. Nephilim slipped inside. The corridor below was completely dark. The noise of the battle raging outside was muffled here, but Nephilim heard over her comm that the attack was about to reach its end. It would probably take less than 30 seconds until her people stormed the inner building, eliminating the rest of the human defenders. She moved forward quickly, toward the room with the suspected high-value assets. 2 heavily armed guards were positioned in front of it, yet they faced away from her and to the staircase, where they expected the attackers to approach from. "They're coming," one of them said, with desperation and a slight quiver in his voice. "Oh my God, they're coming. How'd they even find us here? Please, I don't want to..." "Shut up!" the other one snapped at him. "It doesn't matter now. Keep the EMPs ready. We're going to take out as many of the blue-eyed bastards as we can. We need to hold them off until..." He never got the chance to finish his sentence, as Nephilim rushed up behind them and stabbed both simultaneously through their throats with her integrated blades. "Sorry to disappoint you guys, but there won't be any dead blue-eyed bastards for you today," she said, unmoved. One of the men died instantly, but the other briefly stared at her with wide eyes of horror and disbelief, before he gurgled and collapsed lifelessly like a rag doll. Nephilim turned to the door. She was really curious now about who or what was hiding behind it that was so valuable to all these people. Not willing to waste even one more second, she kicked in the door and rushed into the room, guns in her hands. The room once probably used to be a spacious supervisor's office. It was semi-dark inside. The only light source was an antiquated floor lamp, its light flickering. The old drapes were closed, a ridiculous attempt at hiding from cyborgs with integrated infrared vision. The room was filled with people. Children, to be precise. There were 25 of them, the oldest maybe 12 years old, while the youngest was a baby, probably delivered only a few weeks ago. They all stared at Nephilim with pure horror in their eyes as she entered the room. Some of the younger ones started crying. 2 women were with them. Obviously, this was the place the settlers brought their children to safety in case of an emergency. "Stop! Don't move!" yelled one of the women, pointing an old double-barrel shotgun at Nephilim. She was middle-aged, probably younger since people living in conditions such as these usually aged faster than average. She had marks on her temple, and scar tissue on the side of her head, where augmentation implants had been removed, and no hair would ever grow again. The other one was younger, and had an empty hole where her left eye had once been. She held a toddler in one arm, and something in her other hand. Nephilim stopped short. She had been prepared to fight and destroy whoever might have been hiding up here. But this was an entirely different situation. If possible, the angels didn't kill children. Not because of ethical or humanitarian aspects, but because they were valuable assets. "Nephilim, stand down," she heard Metatron's voice command in her head. Obviously, he had been watching through her eyes, and now directly took control due to the circumstances. Try to resolve the situation. You're safe. I have no reason to harm you, Nephilim told the women with a friendly voice. Don't move. Don't come any closer. You fucking monster. You won't get them, the woman with the shotgun yelled. Please, lay down your weapons. I promise nothing will happen to the children. I'm here to help, Nephilim said with a smile, exactly the way she was trained to in such situations. Excellent, Metatron acknowledged. Proceed. Shut up, you lying, evil bitch, the other woman spat out, and the toddler in her arms started crying. You're here to slaughter us like animals, and then take the little ones. Do you enjoy what you do? You won't get them, ever, the woman with the shotgun repeated. I can bring them to safety. Offer them a better life. You know that, Nephilim said with a calm voice. I understand you want to protect them. You only want the best for them. That's why they should come with me. The shotgun woman laughed bitterly. So they can become like you? Blue-eyed killers? Soulless abominations? I'd rather kill them myself before I let that happen, the woman with the missing eye said. Nephilim's scan showed what the woman held in her hand. It was a small aluminum canister. Possible life-threatening poisoning of valued assets, Nephilim said over the comm, without the people in the room audibly hearing her. I'm aware. Potential threat detected. Dispatching medical team to your position now. Resistance has been broken. ETA, 2 minutes, Metatron said. Eliminate the threats and procure the assets. I'm telling you one more time. Lay down your weapons, Nephilim said calmly, but with a definitive tone that left no room for discussion. Step away from the children. Nephilim saw the one-eyed woman letting go of the poison can and reaching for something behind her. See you in hell, the other woman said. Her finger moved to the trigger of her shotgun. She never got the chance to pull it. Nephilim's reflexes were 10 times faster than any human's. No human would ever win a direct standoff with a cyborg. Before the woman could fire, a bullet from Nephilim's gun penetrated her forehead and turned her brain into pulp, killing her instantly. Simultaneously, Nephilim fired her other weapon, striking down the second woman with a deadly, precise headshot. She jumped toward the collapsing corpse and caught the toddler before it could hit the ground. For a second, the room was completely silent as all kids stared at her in shock. The ones who had stood closest to the two women were covered in blood and brain tissue. Suddenly, Nephilim was confronted with more than 24 pairs of terrified children's eyes, who saw her for what she was. A cold-blooded killer. The monster from their dark closets brought to life. And it had neon blue eyes. Then many of them started crying, screaming, shaking. Some tried to hide in the corners. Others simply kept staring at her in shock. Threat eliminated, Nephilim said, carefully putting down the toddler. Assets have been safely procured. Excellent work, she heard Metatron say. Medics, they need universal antitoxins and tranquilizers on location. See to that ASAP. Dawn arrived as the Dawn arrived as the 3 black aircraft took off into the air. The early sun was hidden behind thick gray clouds, which indicated it would start raining soon, as it did almost every day in this region. The VTOLs were highly illuminated in reddish light as they quickly rose into the sky. The settlement below, which had been home to 126 souls only 1 hour earlier, was now ablaze. Soon there wouldn't be anything left but ashes and bones. Nothing ever remained when hit by Blue Death. Everyone knew that truth. Inside the aircraft, Nephilim and the others were sitting in their seats, calm and unmoved, as if nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. None of them had been killed or even wounded. It had been a routine mission, a walk in the park, just as Metatron said it would be. After reaching proper flight altitude, the black VTOLs transformed back into jets, leaving the site with high velocity and minimal noise. Soon, the rural and industrial areas below changed into a vast, deserted city that was largely destroyed, showing indications of a horrible war long past. Wild vegetation was spreading, and there was mud everywhere, brought by the endless rain. In the center of the desolate city was a long strip of land, which obviously had never succumbed to human development, even when the metropolis was still at its glory. It was now completely overgrown by vegetation, but in its center, a high obelisk still rose upward, reaching toward the skies above, miraculously undamaged by the catastrophe which had destroyed the city long ago. Only its pyramid-like tip had broken off. Not far away, the remains of a huge, formerly impressive manor still stood out among the blighted surroundings. Its color now left much to the imagination, but it once had been a brilliant white. The aircraft quickly passed over the once majestic city and political center of the world. There was nothing worthwhile here now. Instead, they took a course southward.
Okay, it was a flawless operation today. No casualties. Okay. 21.5, perfect. That brings us to the end of chapter 1. How are we doing? Oh, hello, Richard Stevens. And Dave Bushman. Zach Lar, yes. How's everyone doing so far? Better than my camera, I hope. I need to get a better. Someone suggested getting a gooseneck for it. Excellent. I'm glad you enjoy it. It makes me very happy. Oh, 10 viewers. Not bad. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully, once it comes time to record Cyber Squad 3 as well, I can do some Discord streaming over in the Nook. That's an indie project. That's not an SBT thing, but yeah. For those just joining us, actually, these cold reads will eventually be available on the app prior to the book's release, so you can hear warts and all of my narration mistakes. Like, for example, if you want to hear me wrestling with my equipment for 10 minutes at the very beginning. Thank you, Anna. Dave Bushman, doing well. Love hearing you bring it to life. I love bringing it to life. Zach, I need a fiver. I gotta eat it. Oh, you need a 5-minute break? Sorry. I tend only to check in on chapter breaks, just because I like to power through. The sooner we can get this off to the polishers, the engineers, and such, the better. You know, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Yes, I am not the great El Jefe. I am another narrator that joined recently. Well, I get a tattoo at 100 viewers. I don't know. Jesse Cobb, definitely enjoying this. That's a good question. I need to think of what to get. No, my name is Zach. I'm a new narrator with SBT. I just released my first project with them this month, actually. Recorded that back in January. Yes. I'm a man with... I appear to have a plan, Derek. I'm a man who at least creates the illusion of a plan. There are more. Sound booth theater? Yeah. There are many of us. Our ranks are growing. Hello, Bourbon. Yes. I am the latest in a series of additions. I'm not even the latest anymore. They actually just hired some new people. Enjoying this narration. Thank you, Kyle. I'm enjoying having you here.
All right. Let's dive back in.
But yeah, I will pop up. I do a lot of the cold reads as well. Jeff and I have been... Yes, exactly. Zack Attack is Legion. Yes, of course. That's our famed legionary tactic. The ancient Roman Zack Attack, they call it. Thank you. Killing it, boss. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richie. Good to see you here, man. I was glad you got to join in for this one. I know you'd been waiting for this bad boy to come out on audio for a while. Glad we are finally making it happen. Beautiful. But yeah, you can, obviously, you can catch Jeff doing his cold reads of his many illustrious projects, the great El Jefe as he has been referred to. But I've been popping up doing cold reads as well, so you can come hang out. I'm also in the Sound Booth Theater Discord for when I've exhausted the amount I'm allowed to do on the YouTube channel. I finish it up in there, so feel free to stop by and say hello. I'm a frequent guest now.
Alrighty, let's do this. Chapter 2. Guardian Angels. It was a flawless operation today, Metatron said with a thin, characteristic smile. No casualties, no equipment loss on our side, a minimum of resources spent and the target eradicated. 100% efficiency. A perfect balance. As always, the mission debriefing took place in the assembly hall of the HQ. It was a dimly lit room with black walls. The Corps' logo was painted across the front, 2 huge wings in bright neon blue. Metatron stood directly below on a small platform, facing and addressing all angels who participated in the mission today. He was a slim man that appeared to be in his late 30s. In truth, he was much older, but age was irrelevant to a cyborg. Like everyone else, he was dressed in black. He had short, dark hair, pale skin, and slightly androgynous features. Combined with the piercing blue cyborg eyes, this gave his face an unearthly and predatory appearance. His speech and movement left no doubt that he was in command, and truly enjoyed the position. Another terrorist cell has been successfully annihilated. I'm very pleased, and the board will be too when they read my report. You have once again proven our value. You have shown we are invaluable. We are the guardian angels of Olympias, Custodio et Mortifico. Nephilim and the elite cyborg unit she belonged to were known by many names. Blue Death, Blue Eyes, Blue Demons, Angels of Death, or simply monsters, killers, bastards, sociopaths, and whatever else the humans came up with. However, these were unofficial names, since no one in their right mind would ever dare speak them aloud. Their official name was Guardian Angels of Olympias. Their sole purpose was to search and destroy anything that could threaten the Olympias conglomerate, no matter if it came from outside or within. Any means were permitted.
Oh, I put that in the wrong track, damn it. Thinking we need multiple voices for this. I'll just record one for now, and then I'll probably have the rest of the cast just throw a voice in there.
Custodio et Mortifico! They all repeated with one voice. Metatron's smile widened. Dismissed. Everyone rushed to the door. Not only had this been a successful operation, but the short time in which it had been accomplished had given all of them the rest of the day off, provided nothing unforeseen happened that required their immediate intervention. This was something even a cyborg appreciated. Adriel caught up to Nephilim and poked her with his elbow. Drink? I would kill for one. He grinned. After World War III shook the world in the 2030s, nothing was the way it used to be. The shape of the planet changed dramatically. In some places, the land was overcome by the rise of the oceans. In other areas, the Atlantic and Pacific retreated, creating new land masses. Large parts of every continent became uninhabitable. The biggest metropolitan areas were destroyed, nations ceased to exist, and political systems crumbled. But the destruction of one power gives rise to new ones. From the ashes of the old national, social, and power structures, new ones were born. These structures existed before the war, now taking profit from the downfall of the old world. New world orders filled the vacuum of a bygone era, creating a perpetually flawless system. More than 60 years after their rise, everything that once had been important became irrelevant. Nations, borders, cultural identities. The world was now divided between 3 mega-corporations. They shared territories, resources, and human capital between themselves, and had absolute power over everything: production, consumption, population. Anything that needed to be in balance, always. The corporation in control of the American continents was Olympias conglomerate. Their corporate headquarters, Olympias City 1, was located on the east coast of northern...
Coast.
Was located on the east coast of Northern America, stretching from the remains of what was formerly Atlanta, Georgia, southward almost to what had once been Orlando, Florida, and had a population of 45 million people. It had been the best location available on the North American continent, since the northern part of it was either destroyed or buried under thick ice layers. Meanwhile, the west was a radioactive wasteland. In contrast, the Gulf of Mexico was now dry land, and fed a large amount of the population thanks to its excellent soil. Furthermore, the corporation had 2 more satellite branch locations. Olympias City 2 had been built over Panama, and Olympias City 3 covered everything between what was once Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Though combined, both satellites had a smaller work and consumer force than Olympias City 1. Olympias conglomerate had its own law enforcement and military troops to secure stability in the region and keep control over all aspects within. In return, every citizen of Olympias was granted an opportunity to live the perfect life. With stability and security, everyone could choose any occupation they desired. They consumed anything they wanted or craved. Nothing was impossible to achieve, no dream or goal was unattainable. There was no need to take care of anything or anyone but oneself. The corporation took care of everything. All that mattered was value, and everyone could continue to develop theirs further. Of course, even the most perfect system would attract haters, and so there were people in Olympias who tried to oppose it, damage it from within, or break out to live a life outside the society. This couldn't be tolerated. Even worse, there were the other 2 corporations. Since the beginning of the New Dawn, the 3 big players had been in constant conflict, corporate wars, espionage, or even full-on open war with each other. That was why the unit Nephilim and Adriel belonged to had been created, the guardian angels of Olympias, to protect and destroy. A special force of state-of-the-art, high-tech cyborgs, almost invincible warriors under total control, the perfect weapon. And a necessity, since the enemy wasn't sleeping either. The hostile corporations were continually developing new technologies too, and didn't hesitate to set them into action. This was the reason why everyone in the squad had considered today's assignment an easy job. Humans were no match for them. The angels had been created to fight other cyborgs. "That was almost too easy," Adriel said, leaning back in the comfortable lounge seat, his drink in hand. Nephilim shrugged. "Would you prefer to still be in the field?" They were sitting in the Velvet, a bar they both liked to visit recently. The name was self-explanatory, since the generous lounge furniture was all covered in dark red velvet. Heavy candelabras and semi-opaque drapes separating the lounges and creating privacy gave the place a neo-Gothic charm, which was quite fashionable lately. The decor there was much better than the omnipresent concrete, glass, and chrome outside. The bar was on the 87th floor, and the huge windows allowed a good view of the northern part of the city. Not that there was much to be seen, since the district mostly consisted of other high-rise buildings, but sometimes, on one of the rare, clear days, it was possible to see the mountains from here. Nephilim didn't know why, but she liked that. Today, however, the sky was cloudy and gray, and gave the bar a gloomier atmosphere than it usually had, thanks to its interior design and dark-tinted windows. It reflected Nephilim's mood perfectly. She knew that she should be content with what she accomplished during the mission. But somehow, she wasn't. And she couldn't even tell why. She downed her whiskey and put the glass on the small table between them, then signaled the robo-waiters to bring another one. "I see you're thirsty today," Adriel observed with a grin, then continued talking about the mission. "I will honestly never get how people can live like that. Or most of all, why. I mean, they leave a place where they have everything, rip out their implants so they can live in the dirt? In shitholes like those? Why the hell would any sane person do that?
I can't understand it either, Nephilim said. It doesn't make any sense.
They are better off dead, Adriel stated. In a way, we're releasing them from their suffering. And we prevent their ideas from spreading. They're dangerous and wrong. Nephilim nodded. Adriel simply repeated in his own words what they were told. She knew that it was the only truth. She studied his face as he finished his drink and ordered another one. Adriel was a handsome man. Like all angels, he chose to wear black even when off duty, and he was in a fashionable suit now. Concealed under his jacket were 2 pistols and some spare ammo. Even in their free time, the angels were always armed, since technically they were never really off duty. They were allowed and meant to take action any time it was necessary. Ordinary citizens were neither permitted to use or own firearms, and that was why the angels wore them concealed, to blend in. Nephilim, too, was wearing all black, although she preferred a more casual style. Tight pants, boots, a close-fitting top. She was hiding her own weapons under a leather jacket. Her matching black mid-length hair was cut in asymmetric layers, being much longer on the left than on the right side. It wasn't her real hair. Like all cyborgs, she was bald due to electrodes and other hardware planted under her skin and inside her skull. The hair was artificial, yet it was much more than a wig. It looked and behaved completely natural, even or when it got wet. Attached by a magnetic system, it couldn't be blown or yanked off her head. And of course, she was wearing sunglasses to cover her treacherous and unique neon blue eyes. All angels had to hide them if they wanted to go unnoticed. Nevertheless, the eyes were always active, automatically scanning and analyzing anything Nephilim looked at, recording everything and sending it directly to the grid. In case she missed something, others would not. Adriel's hair was snow white, which was a nice contrast to his ebony skin. Contrary to Nephilim's, though, it didn't behave naturally at all. It stood straight up in the air, 8 inches high, as if some invisible force were holding it. His cyborg eyes, too, were thoroughly hidden behind dark shades. I mean, those people are hard-ass fanatics. They preferred their own kids dead before sending them with us? How insane is that?
Yet it was me they called evil.
Adriel snorted contemptuously. Are you kidding me? They break every rule and kill their own children. And we're evil? We're protecting what's right. We're the good guys.
You should have seen the eyes of those kids. How they stared at me, Nephilim said. She felt uneasy remembering it. Those little, accusing, terrified eyes. The horror inside them, seeing her. You did great in there. As far as I heard, only 2 of the youngest died of poisoning. All others were saved. Thanks to you. He smiled at her, and it was a genuine, warm smile. My guess is at least 10% of them are probably foobar, but the rest will turn out to be valuable. Maybe some of them will become angels one day. That had been what the 2 women in the room were horrified of most, Nephilim remembered. They would rather see their children dead than become like her. Like all other angels, she and Adriel had been recruited as children. Over the years, they had been educated, trained, genetically enhanced, augmented, and finally turned into what they were now. They didn't know anything else, and they couldn't remember anything of their lives before. Not even their names. Everyone got an angel name once they became part of the Corps. It was said that even Metatron didn't know who had come up with that idea in the first place. All they knew was that it had been someone from the board. Someone with a very cynical sense of humor, since all angel names came from the Bible, and that was one of the books banned in Olympias. The drinks came, but instead of the robo-waitress, the human barkeeper personally brought them. He placed the glasses in front of them with a bright smile. On the house, for 2 of our most valued customers, he said, bowing his head. Thanks. We appreciate it, Adriel answered, while Nephilim gave the man a friendly nod. We enjoy coming here. We are glad to hear that, the barkeeper replied. Enjoy your drinks. When the barkeeper turned around, his warm smile faded, as if it had never been there. His name was Martin, and he wasn't actually just a bartender, but the owner of the Velvet. Well, technically he wasn't really the owner. The bar was his place, but he was only the leaseholder, for everything in Olympias was owned by the corporation. If not a direct associate, it was possible to have your own business as a leaseholder, contractor, or subcontractor, though. Martin went back to the bar and pretended to be busy there, but in truth he kept an eye on the two black-clad figures sitting in the lounge at the windows. They appeared to be just two good-looking young people from the upper middle class, enjoying a few drinks in the afternoon. Maybe two people having casual sex and spending some time together afterward, such as many did these days. A substantial number of his customers fell into that category, and gladly the other patrons visiting his place today would most likely not notice anything suspicious. But Martin knew better. He had been running bars for more than 20 years and had an eye for people. It wasn't easy to fool him. Martin knew exactly what these two were, and it made his hair stand on end to even look at them. The guy with the snow-white hair at least pretended to be human, smiled and attempted to make small talk, although his smile reminded Martin more of a hungry shark's than that of a human's. But the woman gave him the creeps. Her pale Asian Caucasian face was very beautiful, and the delicacy of her features gave her an innocent and youthful look, but there was also something cold and perilous about her. When she tilted her head and looked at him, he wasn't sure if he should feel aroused or run away screaming. She never smiled, stared out of the window most of the time when she wasn't drinking or talking to her companion. She didn't bother to pretend to be friendly or cheerful as everyone else did. Both had perfect smooth skin, without even a hint of irritations or wrinkles, and no visible implants or augmentations whatsoever. This could either mean they weren't augmented at all, which was close to impossible nowadays, or that they had state-of-the-art implants. Only rich people had these, and the wealthy usually frequented other places than his. No, they couldn't fool Martin. He had known exactly what they were the very first day they came into his place, which almost caused him to have a heart attack. Literally. He had to visit his physician the next day and have him adjust his pacemaker. Martin had known the truth long before he witnessed the guy briefly lift his glasses to brush something off of them, and caught a glimpse of his eyes. Martin had been dreaming of those neon blue eyes coming after him for an entire week, and thought it would drive him insane. Why, of all places, had they chosen his bar to drink at? After all, there were more than 100,000 bars in Olympias City. Why the Velvet? Why? The first time, Martin had hoped it only was a one-time visit, but they came back. Any second, they could draw their weapons and kill everyone inside the bar, including him, for no reason. And no one would stop them. No one would hold them accountable. All Martin could do was keep them content and do nothing to provoke them. After a while, they would hopefully get bored and find another place to haunt. Or maybe they would get killed. That would be the best. If Martin was honest with himself, he had to confess that he would have loved to see both of them dead, ripped into pieces. Those cursed blue eyes staring into nothing. Not able to hurt anyone, ever again. The woman lifted her head and looked at him, and it was just then that he realized he had been staring at her. Martin quickly turned toward his bottles and felt his heart pounding. He would need to revisit his physician tomorrow. "I think that bartender knows who we are," Nephilim said, turning back to the window and sipping on her drink. Adriel shrugged. "So what? We're allowed to be here, aren't we? And if that's the reason we get drinks on the house, even better." He chuckled. "Well, his pants are so full of shit that he can hardly move," she replied. He laughed. "What is this moron thinking? That we'll jump up and kill everyone? Pathetic." "We should try not to scare him too much. My scan shows he has an outdated pacemaker. And I really like his drinks, and this place." Adriel lifted his hands in the air. "Hey, don't look at me like that. I'm a lamb, and you know it." That brought a smile to Nephilim's face. Adriel was the closest thing she had to a friend. She knew she could trust him as much as it was possible to trust anyone. She could always rely on him in combat, and it was pleasant to have him around in her spare time. They had been a team for 4 months now, and had 2 more months to go. Angels were always teamed up in pairs, so everyone had each other's backs. One assignment lasted 6 months, then everyone got a new partner. This was so they weren't able to form deep emotional bonds to each other, get attached. They weren't allowed to have a relationship of any kind.
Oh, hell yeah, that was a long run. Sick.
They weren't allowed to have a relationship of any kind. Their family, their whole life, was the core. Nothing else mattered. Besides, everyone had to be willing to sacrifice their partner at any time if necessary. A single unit was expendable, but the cause, often an important mission, was not. Of course, every angel was an extremely valuable asset, since it took years to train them, and the engineering and programming that made them what they were was worth a fortune. But in the end, sometimes even the most valuable resource needed to be sacrificed for the greater good. Emotional bonds could prove a hindrance in such cases. "So," Adriel said as he leaned back, a grin on his face. "When are you going to become an archangel?" Nephilim sighed, slightly irritated. "That again? Why the hell should I become an archangel?" Adriel's grin broadened. "That's easy, really. It's been 2 weeks now since Castile was KIA. Metatron will soon name a successor, and everyone knows that you are his favorite." There were always 5 archangels, who operated directly under Metatron. They controlled the regular angels, and were Metatron's personal troop, working closely for and with him. They were entitled to bigger quarters, more C-coins for personal use, and many other privileges. "Are you fucking him already?" Adriel kept digging. Nephilim tilted her head. "Are you looking for an early retirement?" Talking about retirement was an inside joke among the angels. Sooner or later, they were either killed in action or were damaged so severely that they weren't able to fulfill their duties anymore. Sometimes they couldn't function mentally after doing the job for too long, or simply degraded in their performance. In all these cases, they were euthanized, and the hardware recycled. There was no real retirement for them. Getting on Metatron's bad side wouldn't automatically lead to retirement, of course. He would never have achieved his position if he did not know how to manage resources without letting them go to waste. But it wasn't a wise thing to do either. Adriel shrugged. He never made a secret of it that he likes keeping his archangels very close. So? It was true. Metatron expected the ultimate devotion of his archangels, male and female. He not only chose the best among the core, but he also wanted them to be ready to do anything for him, any time. "No," Nephilim said. "Happy now?" "Not really. You seem upset and unbalanced. Ever since we arrived. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm probably just exhausted from today's mission." "That thing with the kids got to you, huh?" "No, of course not. Maybe I'm just irritated by your stupid questions." He smiled, but this time she could clearly feel that his smile wasn't genuine. "You know what you need? To get decently laid. It always helps. I would offer myself, but you know how it is." Nephilim knew. Adriel preferred men. Otherwise, it would not only have been acceptable, but even expected for them to hook up. Promiscuity was an essential part of the Olympias' way of life, and angels weren't excluded from that. As long as everything stayed casual, to be sure. Most common humans were scared or disgusted by them, so the angels usually found their sex partners among each other, or in brothels. "I heard there's this new place close to New World Plaza that's supposed to be quite good. I was about to check it out tonight. Want to join? If we share some whores, we save C-coins." "I think I'll pass. Maybe next time," Nephilim said. She finished her drink and got up. "I'll go home and hit I'll go home and hit the sack early today." When they went out the door, Martin was so relieved that he had to sit down for a minute and allow himself a double shot of gin. His hand was shaking. "Be careful not to get a speeding ticket," Adriel joked. That made Nephilim chuckle. Angels were permitted to drive as fast as they wanted, and if any regular police should ever stop her, all she needed to do was lift her sunglasses. No law enforcement member would ever dare to interfere with a guardian angel. They stood above the law, and were only accountable to the board directly. Handling the AI police or security Handling the AI police or security forces was even easier. Every angel could override their programming within seconds. They had arrived at the parking deck on the 22nd floor, where they had left their motorcycles. They were identical, black, streamlined machines, built to go up to... damn it. Built to go up to 300 miles per hour, and were impossible to operate without a neural link. Nephilim connected to hers, turned on the engine, and jumped on. "Take care, Adriel," she said. "You too, Neph. See you tomorrow." She accelerated and drove off. The parking deck ramp led directly to the speedway. As usual, there wasn't much traffic, and it shouldn't take her much longer than a few minutes to arrive home. The speedway was the fastest way to get around Olympias City. It had no speed limit, and was located 200 feet in the air, bordered by 10-foot-high reinforced concrete walls on both sides. This was the reason why it had been given the nickname Deathway. Its death toll was higher than on any other route. However, it was everyone's free choice to use it, so no one complained. And if people were ignorant enough to prefer driving themselves instead of leaving it to the AI, no one could help their poor choices. Besides, only a few people used it. About 10% of the population owned a vehicle for themselves, mostly the privileged ones. Most of them frequented the highway several stories below, which was slower and often crowded because it was also used by the countless autonomous taxis. The Deathway, however, required special access permission. Below the highway were several public transport lanes of various kinds, while on the lowest level, a whole road network for cyclists spread all across the city. Most citizens of Olympias did not need a private vehicle, and were absolutely content living without one. The corporation provided transport to get anywhere, and profit could be made with other products. Nephilim's motorcycle almost didn't generate any noise as she rushed down the Deathway at neck-breaking speed. Thanks to her lightning-fast reflexes, and the fact that she connected the vehicle's software directly to her brain, she didn't need to worry about getting into an accident. All angels not only had their own high-speed vehicles for private use, but they could travel on the speedway as much as they wanted. The reason for that wasn't benevolence, but pragmatism. That way, they could all be called in quickly wherever they might be needed, even the ones off duty who might be spread around the city. Even the ones off duty who might be spread around the city. Plus, every one of them was trained to recognize critical situations on their own and be ready to intervene at any time. It was one of the reasons they were respected and feared so much. They could show up seemingly out of nowhere at any time, at any place. Nephilim passed by endless high-rise buildings of various shapes, like a forest of gigantic trees made of concrete and glass. The only color came from the oversized advertisements everywhere, projected on the walls as moving images or 3D holograms, advertising whatever was currently needed to achieve happiness. The sky was still gloomy, and thick clouds hung deeply in between the high-rises, creating a foggy atmosphere, and it was slowly getting dark when Nephilim saw the Black Pyramid rising up on the horizon. It was not only the center of the city, but also the heart of the Olympias conglomerate. She had almost reached her destination. She took a long, hot shower, in the hope that it would help her relax a bit. But it did not. Of course, she would never have admitted it, but Adriel was right. What had happened today had gotten to her. It confused her, since she usually didn't give much thought to her actions. She did her job, her duty, what she had been created for. She followed orders. There was nothing wrong with that. "We are the good guys." She heard the echo of Adriel's words in her mind. Were they really? Remembering the faces of the children today, she wasn't so sure about that. She was used to the fact that most people feared her. It made things easier sometimes. But when she looked into those children's eyes for a second, she felt as if she could see what they were seeing. A monster. The face of one girl in particular haunted her the most. She was maybe 8 years old, had black hair and big brown eyes. It wasn't only fear she had seen in those eyes. It was deep desperation. All the pain of the world. Nephilim turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, feeling confused and annoyed at the same time. What the hell was wrong with her? These thoughts, these feelings were unacceptable. They could lead to the early retirement she had been joking about only a few hours back. And she wasn't ready for that yet. For a moment she just stood there, water dripping down her body onto the floor. Then she stepped over to the mirror. At first she could not see anything. The small bathroom was filled with steam. It disappeared through the vent, and she recognized her shape first, and then her face and body. She looked into her own eyes. The neon blue eyes everyone was afraid of. Everyone hated. What was she behind these blue eyes? Was she really a monster? Was her conscience as empty as it was supposed to be? She had no answers to these questions. All she knew was that this life and this body were the only ones she had. Though technically they weren't hers. All hardware inside her was the property of Olympias conglomerate. She could not survive without it for even 1 minute. Which, in a way, made her property of Olympias too. She looked her naked body over in the mirror. It was perfect in every aspect. Proportions, skin, curves. Nature only rarely came up with such flawlessness in a female body. And hidden below the beauty was an engineering marvel. Although the majority of people had implants, augmentations, or prosthetics of some sort, they were almost always clearly recognizable as artificial. The sight of metal plates, maintenance ports, or wires sticking out of people's heads was common. Most synthetic limbs stood out from the rest of the body, if not when dressed, then when naked. On Nephilim's body, there was nothing that indicated where the human parts stopped and the machine began. At least not at first glance, only when looking very closely. 60% of her was artificial, while only 40% remained biological. 60-40 had proven to be the magic number for perfect cyborg efficiency. In the beginning, the engineers had tried to implant human brains into fully synthetic bodies for them to be the most robust in combat. But they soon found that this concept wouldn't work. The human brain needed a body it could relate to. It required basic human body functions, human needs, to be able to operate flawlessly. Brains implanted in fully synthetic bodies quickly developed some kind of claustrophobia, and eventually went insane. The project had been a total disaster and waste of resources. Years and many volunteers later, the 60-40 formula was finally introduced. Nephilim went through the same procedure as every other angel. Her limbs had been replaced by synthetic ones, which was only logical. The artificial silicate muscles made her run 10 times faster than any human, jump from great heights and over large distances. Her arms did not look much different than those of an athletic woman who worked out on a regular basis. Yet she could lift up a car or snap a neck with only 2 fingers. The synthetic polymer on her artificial limbs not only looked real and matched the tone of her biological skin perfectly, but it also felt real. Additionally, her fingertips were equipped with sensors, which not only gave her the ability to feel what she touched, they also could scan and analyze surfaces, measure temperature, and detect unusual chemical components. Besides that, her spine was improved for greater stability and flexibility, and almost all vital organs to be more efficient and robust. Finally, she had several neural implants, which not only enhanced her senses and mental performance, but continuously connected her to the grid, and made it possible for her to control external systems with her mind, such as her drone. And of course, there were the eyes. Both a blessing and a curse. In return, her reproductive organs had been removed, since she would not need them anyway, but the parts necessary for sexual pleasure had naturally been left untouched. To work at the highest level of efficiency, it was crucial that a cyborg was kept happy, and its basic human needs were satisfied. The ability to sleep, eat, drink, and fuck. Still naked, Nephilim left the bathroom and walked through her apartment to the huge windows. It was a studio of moderate size, yet still bigger than most, situated on the 98th floor of a mid-class building. In the beginning, the Guardian Angel squad had been housed in barracks, but it was soon found that it increased their efficiency if they were allowed to have their own quarters. Zephon, one of Nephilim's former partners, always used to joke about it, that the reason for the change was to give them the illusion of free choice and being an actual person. But she had never given this statement much thought. It didn't matter now, since Zephon had been sent into retirement 2 years ago. The apartment was the property of the corporation, and part of Nephilim's pay. It had come fully furnished and equipped with everything a human being needed to be content, including an entertainment console with an integrated VR port. The room was dominated by a big bed, and had nothing personal inside whatsoever. No decor, pictures, stuffed animals, or whatever people like to put up to make a standard place homey. The big hollow screen was on, as always. It could only be switched off when the apartment system went into night mode. Nephilim had turned the volume down to a minimum. She wasn't interested in the latest news, how great Olympias was doing compared to the other corporations, or what the modern citizen needed to achieve happiness. She knew what most people out there weren't supposed to know, that Olympias was in constant danger, and that it was her job to keep it safe. Plus, she was busy with other thoughts right now. Outside her window, she saw the illuminated high-rise buildings of the inner circle of the city, and in their midst, the gigantic Black Pyramid. The inner circle was a restricted area, only accessible by the people who lived or worked there, the board, the management, and higher administration, but also movie stars, TV executives, or other VIPs. It was the most well-protected district of the city. Directly at its rim was the Guardian Angels HQ. Nephilim could not see it from here, but it was very close. All angels lived only a few minutes away, but outside the inner circle, naturally. She stared at her own reflection in the window. With the darkness of the night beyond it, her eyes appeared not blue, but like dark, glimmering holes. Again, she couldn't help but remember the horrified look in the eyes of those children. She wondered what would happen to them. Was it really such a horrible thing to become like her, that death seemed somehow preferable? The reason why those kids had been valuable was that they weren't registered. They were like blank paper. They technically didn't even officially exist. The corporation could turn them into anything they wanted, without anyone ever asking any questions. Nephilim sighed. She needed to make her mind stop thinking right away, get to bed, and sleep if she wanted to be fit for the job the following day and perform her duties with efficiency. But she wouldn't manage to accomplish that on her own at the moment. She stepped away from the window and opened a drawer next to her bed.
Oh, damn it. All right.
She stepped away from the window and opened a drawer next to her bed. There she stored her drugs in several aluminum boxes. A huge variety of narcotics was purchasable legally in Olympias, as long as they came from official stores run by the corporation. Production and distribution of unauthorized drugs were highly illegal and punished with high penalties, including the death sentence. That was nothing that Nephilim and her kind had to worry about. It would be a severe waste of resources to send the angels after puny drug dealers. She chose one of the products, a purple gel she inhaled into her nose in tiny bubbles, then laid down on the bed. The high kicked in almost immediately, and she started feeling increasingly relaxed and content. Everything was good. Everything was as it should be. She fell asleep with a smile on her face.
Beautiful. All right. I believe that officially marks the first hour of the book as complete. That's always a significant little milestone. All right. Let's check in and see how everyone's doing. And then we shall resume. How's everyone doing? Oh, Camaro, Blade Runner is very, very good. And so is Ghost in the Shell. Love Ghost in the Shell. Wonderful. Thank you, Anna. The crew for this makes me very happy. Well, thank you there, Richie.
Makes me very happy to be working on this and narrating for all of you. Alrighty. I believe we've got time. We're doing at least a 2-hour session, so I'm going to do at least one more chapter before we wrap up for today. I'm hoping to do more than that, actually. But I think, yeah, 7 o'clock finish time will be good. Altered Carbon, are you asking if I've read it, or if this is comparable to that? I haven't seen the show. I've read Altered Carbon, though. I quite liked it. It's friggin' brutal, though. Richard Morgan writes some brutal shit. Alright. Let us see. Yeah, I agree. That's what I've heard, anyway. I don't know why I said I agree since I haven't seen the show, but yeah, that's what I've heard. Alright. The old man bedtime calls me. Yeah, I have that coming up pretty soon myself. Thanks for stopping by, Derek. Great to see you as always. Alrighty. Well, I'm only doing one more chapter, so if you need to go to bed, obviously go to bed, Richie, but if not, if you can stick around for one more chapter, that's what we got. That is what we will do. Beautiful. Chapter 3. Examination. She was woken by an alarm clock beeping directly in her skull, as well as a text message in her field of vision, saying, "Nephilim, report for cognitive examination, 8 a.m. sharp." She opened her eyes. It was 6:30 a.m., and she knew that without consulting a watch, thanks to her internal chronos... Oh, she's got herself an internal chronometer. Lucky her. Wish I had one. And she knew that without consulting a watch, thanks to her internal chronos system. It was still dark outside. The integrated sensors in her apartment noticed that she was awake and switched into day mode. The lights and TV went on. Nephilim sat up in the bed. Examination? Regular exams were never scheduled on such a short notice. What could this be about? No system showed any errors, and her biological parts were in excellent condition. She had performed flawlessly in yesterday's mission. Even Metatron had acknowledged that. No one could assume that she had been feeling confused last night. Did she show too openly that she was unwell toward Adriel? Had someone listened to or watched their conversation in the bar? Or could it be... No, she couldn't believe Adriel reported her for suspicion of potential underperformance. He wouldn't do that, would he? On the other hand, what was all that nudging about becoming an archangel all about? Nephilim honestly had no idea why she believed she could be Metatron's choice, and she wasn't even sure if she wanted the job. Adriel, on the other hand, would like nothing more than to get such a promotion. But it made no sense to be paranoid now. Most likely, Adriel had nothing to do with the examination, and she had to trust her partner or she might end up dead during the next assignment. It would be necessary to find out if there was any truth in her suspicion, though. Luckily, last night's confusion had passed completely. The Relax X had been exactly what she had needed. The gloomy feelings she had experienced seemed like nothing more than a bad dream now. She yawned. Outside, the sky started to brighten up. On TV, a colorful and cheery commercial was advertising a new dating platform, which automatically matched up participants for blind date one-night stands and/or casual sex using the data profiles stored on the Olympias citizen servers. It had 100% consumer satisfaction and advertised special deals for new members. Walking into the bathroom, Nephilim imagined how it would be to become a member. Seeing the faces of men matched up with her when they realized what was beneath the dark sunglasses would be priceless. It brought a smile to her face. 30 minutes later, she was as operational as she could be and ready to go. She grabbed a quick breakfast at the cafeteria in the parking deck level of her building, then rushed off on her motorcycle. It was common to eat on the run or in food parlors and restaurants. No one cooked anymore. Most apartments, like Nephilim's, didn't even provide a kitchen, for it would only be a waste of space. All it had was a coffee maker and a small fridge for drinks and ice. It took her only 5 minutes to arrive at the Guardian Angels HQ. It was a black cubic building, and at first glance windowless. In truth, the windows were tinted to match, and were almost invisible against the smooth surface of the facade. The only contrast was the oversized logo printed on the front in neon blue. 2 wings. The bigger part of the HQ was located underground. In the center of the cube was a huge atrium where a hatch opened. This was where the VTOLs typically launched and landed. The sun was just rising when she drove inside the building, but its blackness seemed to swallow the early rays of sunlight. Fenwick, too, had a hard night. He had decided to give the new dating platform that everyone was talking about a try. Total disaster. How in the hell could it achieve 100% consumer satisfaction? Was he the only one for whom it hadn't worked out as hoped? No, he wasn't an idiot, but he knew his share about programming. As far as he was concerned, they had a crappy algorithm and hid it behind a deceitful advertisement, which made you believe it was your own fault if it didn't work out. The girl the system had hooked him up with was entirely not his type. Obviously, she had never heard of plastic surgeries before. She had also been so boring in bed that he had almost fallen asleep while having sex with her. Vanilla sex was so not his taste, but she did not agree to anything else. So he took what he could get. Afterward, he decided that it was probably better to stick to VR next time. Cheaper, and more satisfying. Apparently, she enjoyed it so much, however, that she asked him if they wanted to do it again casually. He paid for the room and quickly left without making any commitments. It was common to take a room in places specialized for such occasions, and not go to someone's home for a one-night stand, though usually it only took a few hours and not a full night. No one wanted to get too personal and invite a stranger to their place. And the so-called funtails existed in every imaginable design and price range, from the romantic fairy tale-style bedroom emphasizing popular movie... From the romantic, fairy tale-style bedroom emphasizing popular movies, comics, or VR world decor, to the dungeons of pain. Nothing was impossible. However, this encounter, and the fact that he had drowned his frustration in booze once home, had left Fenwick grumpy, unsatisfied, and mildly hungover today. And it was only Wednesday. Everyone was already busy in the lab when he arrived. Dr. Dina Mendez, his boss, gave him a contemptuous look while her assistant Brianna was rushing around like a busy little bee. Fenwick couldn't stand her. She was too ambitious for his taste. "You're late," Dr. Mendez said. Fenwick peered at the wall clock. He was late by 1 minute. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "We have a mental examination scheduled for 8 a.m. That surprised him. "What?"
I thought we only had routine checks today, the first starting at 11 a.m.
It came in during the night. Special inquiry. It came in during the night. Special inquiry.
The big man himself wants to have it done, Brianna added.
Actually, she could have been cute if she wasn't such a pain in the ass. Originally from Olympias 3, her skin tone always reminded him of freshly brewed cappuccino. She had hazel brown eyes and voluminous curly hair, dyed fire red.
Wait, voluminous. I always say that one wrong.
God damn it. She had hazel brown eyes and voluminous curly hair, dyed fire red. Fenwick's curiosity had awoken now. If Metatron himself wanted to have things done urgently, he usually had good reasons for that. He went to the console and looked at the holographic screen.
Who is it?
More than 500 humans worked in the Guardian Angel HQ. Scientists, physicians, psychologists, engineers, technicians, and many more. Even after years, many of them still felt uneasy when dealing with the Angels. Some were even scared, although no one would admit it. But not Fenwick. He loved the Angels, especially the female ones.
Nephilim,
Brianna answered at the same moment Fenwick read it in the file. The name almost sent shivers down his spine. His grumpiness and hangover were forgotten instantly.
But wasn't she here just last month for her routine checkup? He asked, raising his eyebrows. Is something wrong with her?
He dearly hoped not. Brianna shrugged, then moved closer toward him.
I have no clue, but it seems to be something out of the ordinary. Metatron even sent specific questions we are supposed to ask her.
She spoke Metatron's name.
Oh, I need to do that again.
Metatron even... Oh, wait, no.
Do that again.
Metatron even sent specific questions we are supposed to ask her.
She spoke Metatron's name as if he were God himself. And in a way he was, at least inside these walls. Working for the HQ paid higher than average and provided several other unique benefits. Still, the non-disclosure agreement was hardcore, and if you broke it or any other rule, being removed from the job took on a whole new meaning.
That's enough chit-chat, Dr. Mendez intervened. And it's our job to question the subject, not our instructions.
If Fenwick didn't know better, he would assume she was a cyborg herself, or maybe even an android. She was wearing the same gray-blue suit all medical and scientific personnel had, and a white coat over it, which indicated that she was one of the lead scientists. However, she had never been seen without high heels. She had shiny black hair, green contact lenses, and several implants on her temple, her neck, and of course the one on her wrist that they all had, which was essential for doing their job. Mendez didn't look a day older than 30, but Fenwick knew that she had to be much older since she had a son his age. And she was a bitch.
Certainly, he said.
Prepare everything, then bring in the subject. She's already waiting in the hall.
I will see to that,
Fenwick said quickly. Of course you will. A sarcastic smile appeared on Dr. Mendez's red lips as she sat down at her desk behind the window to check through her notes. The window faced a small room with blank walls and an examination chair in the middle. Fenwick finished his preparations, then stepped outside in the hall. She stood there, casually leaning against the wall, her arms folded, dressed in the plain black uniform the Angels wore when not dispatched. Fenwick's heart started pounding when he approached her, and she lifted her head, facing him. Most people considered the piercing neon blue eyes unsettling and frightening. Fenwick considered them beautiful and smoking hot.
Hi, Nephilim. It's nice to see you. How are you today?
He asked with a cheerful smile. Couldn't be better, she answered without returning his smile. She tended to speak relatively slowly, in a calm, smooth tone. It gave Fenwick the creeps and sent shivers up his spine at the same time. Her voice was extremely sexy, yet there was also always something cold and dangerous about it, which made it even more exciting. "After you," he said, opening the door to the examination room. Watching how she entered the room made his pulse rise. Sometimes he could not believe that she was more than half machine. She moved smoothly, like a cat. Not a kitten, but a panther. Nephilim sat down in the chair, then briefly nodded toward the huge mirror facing her, of which she knew was an observation window on the opposite side, where people were watching her. "You have a new haircut," Fenwick observed, fixating her head in the designated part of the chair. "My old hair was partially burned on a mission 2 weeks ago. I had to get something new." "It suits you very well." "Thank you." He had to find the courage to ask her today. He had been considering it for months, and yet always bailed out, and he could not understand why. It wasn't forbidden or anything. In fact, it happened from time to time that the angels mingled with human associates, although not as often as it could. Most humans would rather stay away from the killer cyborgs with their blue eyes. Fenwick obviously wasn't like the others. Nephilim's beauty, combined with the ever-present danger that followed her, attracted him. He admired almost all of the female angels, and found it difficult not to stare at them, but she was his favorite. If he was honest with himself, he had to admit that he even had a slight crush on her. On countless nights, he had fantasized about having sex with her sitting atop of him while he was restrained, helpless. The fact of how dangerous she was, and that she could kill him any time with 2 fingers, or slit his throat with her blade, turned him on. Fenwick's hands shook slightly as he pulled her artificial hair back and opened the port on the left side of her skull, which led directly to her brain implants. She looked at him sideways but said nothing. He quickly got a grip on himself. This was not the time for daydream fantasies. He needed to focus. He would ask her later, after the examination, once back in the hall, if she would consider hooking with him. The worst that could happen was her saying no, right? In that case, he would have to shift his interest toward another angel. But if she said yes, he better stop thinking about it right now. He stuck connectors inside the ports and linked them with the console attached to the chair, then checked the data stream using the implanted panel on his wrist. "We're all set," he informed Nephilim. "You know the procedure. I'll pick you up in a few minutes." She nodded, but seemed deeply focused. He smiled at her, then left the room. "You should be careful not to tip over," Brianna said when he returned to the control room. "I beg your pardon?" "While licking her boots," she giggled. Anger rose in Fenwick. This chick was really stupid and annoying, whereas the one behind the window was a goddess. "It's wrong to treat them like humans," Dr. Mendez added with an unmoved tone of voice. "They may look pretty, but they're nothing more than killing machines equipped with a minimum of humanity so they can be more efficient. You better remember that." Then they started the examination. As usual, it began with standard questions, asked by a neutral, artificial, feminine voice. Nephilim answered, and the team behind the mirror monitored her face, voice, and brain activity. "What is your purpose?" was always the first question. "Custodio et mortifico," she said without hesitation. "What is it you are protecting?" "The Olympias conglomeration." "Are you content with your purpose?" "Yes." "Do you agree with Olympias' philosophy?" 100%. It's not my place to have an opinion or make judgments pertaining to the philosophy. It's not my place to have an opinion or make judgments pertaining to the philosophy. Are you ready to sacrifice your life to protect Olympias? At any given time. Are you ready to sacrifice your life if a superior guardian angel commands you to do so? It's my duty to always follow commands given by a superior guardian angel. Fenwick looked up from the data running down the holoscreen in front of him and into her face. It was his job to monitor her brain activity for anything out of the ordinary. If Nephilim should experience any kind of conflicting emotion, hesitate with her answers, or try to lie, it would show in his data. So far, everything was perfect, as always. He would never understand how she could be ready to sacrifice her life without a doubt. All angels were indoctrinated to think this way since childhood. The test would instantly be considered a failure if any of them hesitated to answer this question, even for a millisecond. Fenwick couldn't imagine that he would ever risk his life, not to mention sacrificing it. He would never do that, not for anyone or anything. Do you enjoy being a guardian angel? Yes. Why? I don't know anything else. Do you sometimes wish you could be something else? I am what I am. Are you sometimes scared? No. Would you ever hesitate to kill a person if commanded to? Never. What do you feel when killing a person? Nothing. Does it bother you to be feared and hated? No. Fenwick frowned. What was that? The readings had shown a peak when she answered the last question. That had never happened before with her. She was always perfect. But this was no reason to be concerned, he knew. Many angels showed anomalies from time to time. After all, their brains were still mostly human. As long as it stayed under 5%, everything was fine. Next came a row of further questions concerning her daily routine, teamwork, and combat, followed by more inquiries about her thoughts of the core values of the Olympias society. After that, she was confronted with several images displayed directly in front of her vision. It was a mixture of gruesome footage of violence, blood, and death on the one hand, and comforting ones on the other, such as a beautiful sunset, a puppy, or smiling people who were obviously having fun. The pictures stimulated Nephilim's brain exactly in the parameters they were supposed to. It was impossible to fake these kinds of reactions, since most of the activity took place on a subconscious level. The examinee behaved within specified parameters if neither the positive nor the negative images triggered an exceeding amount of emotions. Both types of visuals should leave the angels without an emotional response. Usually this would have ended the examination, but not this time. I will ask you some more questions now, the AI interrogator said. Nephilim's face stayed unmoved, yet Fenwick clearly could read from the peak that she was surprised. Shoot, she said. What do you think of Metatron as your commander? The voice asked. I can't imagine anyone better. Suddenly, Fenwick knew what this was all about. Metatron wanted Nephilim tested because he saw her in a more responsible position. He, too, knew she was special. Have you ever doubted any of Metatron's decisions? Never. Would you do anything Metatron asks you to do? Naturally. Would you kill a fellow angel if Metatron asked you to? Yes. Would you kill your partner if Metatron asked you to? Of course. Fenwick almost jumped out of his chair in surprise. Holy shit, that was a blunt lie. Her face and voice did not show anything, neither did her pulse. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't unsure or battling with herself as often might occur when they didn't answer the questions as they should. She simply had lied. It showed crystal clear on his screen. Do you feel the mission you participated in yesterday was justified? It was. Why do you feel that way? These people were enemies of Olympias. Terrorists. They posed a threat to everything we stand for. They deserved to die. What did you feel killing them? Nothing. What did you feel when confronted with the terrified children you saved from the terrorists? Nothing. Fenwick bit his lip. Another lie. And it had created an even bigger emotional peak than the first one. Do you believe you provided a better future for the children? I do. Another peek. This time it wasn't a lie, but a strong emotional reaction of insecurity and doubt. For a second, Fenwick was stunned as he stared at the screen in disbelief. He knew the final results would be catastrophic. They would lead to a memory and personality wipe at best, and death sentence at worst. Unless he changed the result. It would be no big deal for him. All he needed to do was change some figures and the peaks would be gone. It would take him only a few seconds. No one would notice. He stole a glance at the two women conducting the procedure with him. Both were focused on their own consoles and on Nephilim behind the window. They wouldn't notice shit. The examination was still running, and there were a few questions left, which were more about her intelligence than emotions. She shouldn't have any problems with these. Fenwick felt his heart starting to race, his hands sweating. If he wanted to act, he needed to do it now. It was madness. If he got caught, they would execute him. He had never done anything illegal before in his life. Hell, he had never even done anything out of line before. He was just a computer guy with a boring life and some kinky fantasies. What should he do? His hand was shaking. But then, he glanced at Nephilim's angelic face, and the unbelievable calmness she exhibited while going through all of this. Whatever she was hiding, she probably had good reasons to do so, and she lied because she wasn't ready to sacrifice a friend. Never before had he known anyone interested in anyone else besides themselves. She was unique. Could he stand by and let her die? Suddenly, everything went so quickly that only a minute later, he wasn't sure if it really had happened, or if it only was a dream. His hands moved across the hollow keyboard beyond the screen, and his fingers, those of a programmer that knew how to do their job blindfolded, flew over it as fast as if they were artificial themselves. He deleted the peaks and changed the result into an almost perfect one, leaving just the first discrepancy to make everything look more plausible. No one would ever notice the manipulation. He would delete the cache at the end of the day and pretend to stay overtime to run some system diagnostics, but would instead wipe everything that could ever lead back to him or what had just happened. Nephilim was safe, and he needed to admit to himself that he had a crush. It was insane. "Thank you, Nephilim," Dr. Mendez said through a speaker so the cyborg could hear her inside the examination room. "That's it for today. Fenwick will be with you shortly to unplug you and give you the results." Brianna yawned. Damn, it's always so boring with her. Does she even feel anything at all? Sometimes I think she's a robot, she said after Mendez had turned off the speaker. "I told you, they're not human," their boss said with a shrug. Fenwick had to hold himself together and not start laughing hysterically. The shirt under his suit was dripping with sweat. Nephilim sat quietly in the chair, still plugged into the system and waiting to be released. Nothing in her face or body language showed that she was concerned in any way. Yet her thoughts were racing. She had no idea what this had been about, who had set it up, or why. But she hadn't been prepared for the questions asked and completely fucked up. She knew she had lied, but she had no other choice than to do so, since telling the truth would have been even worse. The truthful answers to the 3 questions which might break her neck, what she really thought, or even worse, felt, were contrary to anything she was supposed to be, and they might even indicate she doubted the system. Every one of them knew since childhood that the system was the best that ever existed in the history of mankind. If a civilian openly doubted that, it could get them into severe trouble, that even could result in a visit by Nephilim and her fellow angels. But for an angel, to doubt that what they did was righteous was heresy. It was a death sentence. She wasn't scared. Death she brought to others, and the high risk to fall victim to it herself. Every day was such a constant part of her life that she was supposed to be desensitized to it. But the confusion she had felt the night before, and thought she had successfully overcome, was back. What was wrong with her? Her only hope now was that maybe her feelings and doubts didn't show up on the scans too clearly. Sometimes it happened that the chart showed irritations and anomalies which were out of the norm, but not too severe. Then the result wouldn't be satisfying, and her chances to become an archangel, if there ever were any, would be blown forever. But it wouldn't be a reason for greater consequences, at least not yet. She would have time to get a grip on herself until the follow-up in a week. She was sure that all her other monitored body functions did not show anything suspicious, for she had perfect control over those. Now there was nothing else for her to do but wait. She soon would know if she fucked up completely or not. Then instead of Fenwick, fellow angels would enter the room and escort her out. But when the door opened, it was the IT specialist who came in. Nephilim had to control herself and not show how relieved she was. Never before had she been so happy seeing the little creep. Fenwick was a short guy, shorter than her, and a natural redhead with a freckled face and green eyes. He wasn't ugly, but there was something repulsive about him, mostly because of how he looked at her. Even a blind woman would have noticed that he was undressing her with his eyes. But a blue-eyed cyborg naturally saw a lot more. His pupils widened, his blood pressure rose, and his heart started pounding whenever they were in one room. In other words, he was horny as hell. Yet he never behaved intrusive, but rather submissive in her presence. Nephilim knew exactly what these kind of men were attracted to and what they wanted. She had her share of them, and was as uninterested as one could be. Nephilim couldn't possibly have any idea that the little creep had just put his life on the line to save hers. But she was so relieved to see him instead of a death squad that she smiled when he entered the room. It meant that the result had been good enough to let her off the hook for now. She had time to work on herself and fix whatever was wrong with her. Fenwick stopped short for a moment, seeing her smile, then beamed. "Good news," he said, walking toward her. "Your results were excellent, as always." Her smile faded. That was absolutely impossible. Even if she had managed to hide the lies, there must have been a peek showing that she was at least struggling with the answers. Otherwise, the system had to be flawed, or something else was very wrong. "I'm glad," she answered without any particular emotion in her voice. She couldn't believe she would get away with it. That was almost too good to be true. On the other hand, beggars couldn't be choosers. Whatever had happened, it most likely saved her life. Fenwick started to unplug her from the system, and she noticed that something was wrong with the guy. Even more than usual. His hands were slightly shaking, but that was nothing new. They always did when he got to touch her, even if it was just to stick connectors into her implant ports. He was sweating, and that too was nothing out of the ordinary with him. But Nephilim noticed that he had lost a tremendous amount of body fluids in the form of sweat, and that his body showed signs of a person who had just finished a 100-meter dash, a person whose body wasn't trained for that at all. Besides, he seemed to be happy. Euphoric, even, but tried as hard as he could not to show it. "Thank you," she said when he was done, and she got up. "It was a pleasure." When Nephilim walked toward the door and opened it, for a second she was sure there would be people standing there to take her away after all. But the hall was empty. It was incredible, really. She had never thought that anyone could cheat the system like that. After all, it was said that it was infallible. She stepped outside, and Fenwick followed her. "Until next time," she said, hoping it wouldn't be too soon. She turned around and wanted to take her leave, still hardly believing what had just happened when Fenwick stopped her.
Nephilim?"
She turned back toward him. "Yes?"
I was thinking, maybe..."
Nephilim. Nephilim, a stern voice interrupted. Nephilim's scan... Ah, damn it. A stern voice interrupted. Nephilim's scan showed her who it was before she turned around to face the speaker. Gadriel approached at a resolute pace. She was no archangel, but worked directly for Metatron's office, which made her believe she was something better than the regular angels. Nephilim faced her, curious what this was about now. Metatron wants to see you in his office. Delays won't be tolerated, Gadriel said. Nephilim was surprised. This day couldn't get any stranger. Metatron had never before asked her into his office. He rarely did that with anyone. She nodded. I'm on my way. So long, Fenwick. She left the IT expert behind and followed Gadriel, who was already rushing back down the hall toward the elevators. See you later, Nephilim, Fenwick called after her. See you later, Nephilim. Nah, I need more disappointment. See you later, Nephilim, Fenwick called after her. And there was so much disappointment in his voice that it almost sounded like grief. Nephilim dearly hoped that she wouldn't need to be examined for a while, so she wouldn't have to see him again anytime soon. Just before she reached the elevators, she was hit by a sudden insight that was simultaneously so absurd and plausible that it could actually be true. Gadriel already stood in the elevator when she entered and gave her a scornful sideways glance, but Nephilim ignored it. Instead, she looked back at the short guy, who was still standing there as if she would change her mind and come back. She knew exactly what he had been about to ask her, and her answer would have been rather unfriendly, and maybe even humiliating for him. Now she was grateful it never came to that. Was it really possible? If it was so, then this odd young man to whom she had unmindfully referred as a creep had just saved her life. Nephilim's mind raced. Her inherited high intelligence was amplified by the software integrated into her brain. The angels were designed to quickly make conclusions, especially when it came to humans and their behavior. Razor-sharp logic combined with enhanced intuition, a mixture every detective would gladly have sold his soul for. 1 second later, when the elevator door had closed, Nephilim had done the math and knew exactly what had happened. The system was infallible indeed. However, the human who operated it wasn't. She must have scored abysmally at the examination, just as she had feared. But for some reason, Fenwick had changed the result. He could do that easily. He had the know-how, and the other two scientists most likely were monitoring different screens. The tension of the situation must have almost pushed him over the edge. The excitement, an attempt to hide it, had brought his unexercised body to its limits. He had lost more than 30 ounces of perspiration, and once it was over, and he knew he had been successful, his body stopped producing adrenaline and pumped him with endorphins instead, which made him feel euphoric. As long as no one suspected that she failed the test, no one would ever have any idea that Fenwick manipulated the result, and most likely he was skilled enough to cover his tracks thoroughly. The only question that remained was why? Why would he take such an enormous risk? To get laid? That was absurd. Few things were easier than sex in Olympias. However, it was futile to speculate about that now. Besides, she had other things to focus on. The elevator rushed at high speed from the 5th underground floor to the 6th above-ground floor. Did Metatron say why he's summoning me? Nephilim asked the other cyborg woman. Gadriel faced her and answered, sneering. You like playing innocent, don't you? I was wondering what he sees in you. Maybe it's that. Maybe he simply wants to stick his dick into your innocent face. Nephilim's answer came with a calm yet chilling voice. I can carve the skin on your face off of your skull faster than you blink, then feed it to you. Maybe that's what he likes about me. How about we test it? Although all angels went through the same basic training and augmentations, they still had different enhanced talents. Of course, Gadriel was equipped and trained for combat, but she spent most of her time inside the HQ. Nephilim, on the other hand, was one of the angels who were sent to the front line of the most challenging and dangerous missions. She was one of the best. There was no doubt she could rip Gadriel into shreds if she wanted. "You wouldn't dare touch me," Gadriel hissed, slight insecurity in her voice. Nephilim shrugged without looking at her. "Watch me." The elevator door opened, and both women stepped out as if nothing had happened. If it was true that Metatron wanted to make her an archangel, it was now clear to Nephilim that Gadriel had badly desired the job. And she wasn't the only one. Half the angel squad wanted it. Gadriel led her down a dimly lit hall toward a massive double door. She knocked before opening it, then stepped inside. Nephilim followed her.
Beautiful. All right. And that will bring us to the exciting conclusion of today's cold read. I'll be looking at the SBT cold read schedule. I don't know what the Friday schedule is. My hope is that I can do it then. If not, because I want to make sure I'm not conflicting with Jeff's streaming schedule. Maybe I'll do it super early. I don't know yet. Because, yeah, we can Discord stream at the same time, but 2 simultaneous cold reads, I think, would be problematic, so I will check with him. I will check with him right now. Alrighty, that will conclude set for today. Alrighty. Well, thanks for sticking around. That was a good, solid shift we just worked there. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you. Blind Dude DC. Who needs bed? I might. After today. I've been in the booth for, God, 6 or 7 hours, maybe? Maybe more. Who knows? Why am I pulling the camera off? I'm still talking to people. What am I doing? What the hell am I doing? Okay. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Oh, I'm glad you liked Finwick and Gadriel. I was worried about getting Finwick right. I remember our discussions about him. I was like, all right, come on. I gotta channel my Leonard Hofstadter here. Come on. Get that Leonard Hofstadter going. It was funny. I actually, completely unintentionally, I don't know why, but a bunch of Big Bang Theory clips popped up in my YouTube Recs today, and I was just absentmindedly watching them. And it was like, it ended up being shockingly relevant. Jesse Cobb already hooked. Well, hey, we'll be back probably tomorrow. Anna shouts out all of this on her social media accounts. If not, we will definitely be back next week. We will be pursuing the narration aggressively so that we can get all of the casts recorded. And then we're going to go through and we're going to add the sparkle and shine of sound and music. So we will be, I'm very excited about this one. This is my first, really, really involved SBT production, so I'm very happy to make that happen. So, I think after the next cold read, the next session, I will have enough that I can ship off to the inimitable Annie Ellicott, and she will be our Nephilim. And then Justin shall be our Adriel. So what you've heard today, of course, is my placeholder dialogue. So every line that was said by me as Nephilim will be said by Annie. Every line said by me as Adriel will be said by Justin. And when Zephaniel shows up, well,
That's the aforementioned El Jefe. He will be doing that.
So, thank you all for coming. Pleasure to have you here, and I will see you all next time. I will keep Anna informed. She can blast it on her channels. And enjoy your evening now. Good night. And Jesse Cobb, amazing read-through. Thank you very much. Lovely to have you here. Good night, everyone.